This podcast is brought to you by Bernie's Tap and Grill. It's family owned and operated since 1954. Located across from Wrigley Field on Clark and Waveland. My dad hit a few home runs on the Waveland Avenue, and Bernie's was my dad's favorite place to go. It's got delicious food, 4 full-service bars, an awesome beer garden, a sidewalk patio cafe, and a cool upstairs area. It's the place I've always met my friends at before and after games. Go on by and tell Linda Dillman Jeff Santos sent you. Bernie's Tap and Grill, where you go when you go to Wrigley.
Sit back and relax. It's time for peanuts, popcorn, and Cracker Jacks.
Hey, how's it going? I'm your host, Jeff Santo. I'm here with my wife, Christy.
Hello, hello.
We're really excited to bring you part 2 of Billy Williams. He talks about some great stuff. Coming from Whistler, Alabama, Billy's such a big family man, and he had such a tight-knit community down there. Some really great ball players. Can't wait for you to hear that. And our crackerjack call is Ed Lynch, another close friend of my dad's, who Ed was a pitcher with the New York Mets and Cubs and then transitioned to the general manager job with the Cubs from 1994 to 2000. That story is a great story. And when my dad was broadcasting with the Cubs, Ed and him spent a lot of time on the road together, and he talks about that.
They're kind of like family.
Oh, yeah. Ed, absolutely. Absolutely.
You know, when you think about it, your work family, right? And then you have your life family, your work family. And even in the movie business, when you work on these projects for, you know, whether it's a month or 6 months or sometimes more of these big studios, you create like these little momentary, you know, families that happen temporarily in your life. And, you know, it's kind of like you miss them later on. So this is kind of nice for you, you know, to be kind of rekindling these family work, your dad's work family relationship.
You're so right about that. I mean, you know, like you said, it is comparable to movie sets, and because you're all working together for something worthy to come out of it, right?
Right.
And it's not just you. It's, you know, it's for a lot of people. Because when you succeed, you got, you know, in baseball, you got a lot of fans cheering for you, a lot of behind the scenes people working to make sure the fields are right, the clubhouse and the guys are in shape and all that. And even like Mark Brady was talking about in the truck, you know,
right,
for, you know, broadcasting a game. You got to work together to make the best product possible for a whole lot of people to enjoy it. And I think when you're a part of something like that, you have to work together. And, you know, when you have good clubhouses, you usually have a lot of wins. When you have bad clubhouses, you know, you're down in the cellar. Same with a movie. Some of these movies that don't turn out well, there may be friction on the set and all that.
But then it kind of goes the other way. I mean, some movies, when there's friction on set, there's a magical combination.
That's true.
Where you kind of like work through it to try to get it onto the screen, and it works because you made the effort. You know, if you just give up at the first sign of conflict, then it fails. But if you can strive through that conflict, it kind of brings the family closer together.
Right. You're right. I mean, the Oakland A's were known to not get along a lot of times. They won 3 World Series. So you're right about the Yankees, Steinbrenner and Billy Martin and Reggie Jackson, you know, had their problems. But at the end of the day, right, you come together, you fight hard. And at the end of the day, if, you know, you come out winning, you know, you're even closer, you know, sometimes with those relationships.
Right. Well, it's really good that you're rekindling all these relationships and bringing them on the podcast, because we really enjoy hearing all this.
Well, I couldn't have done it without you, babe. So, you know.
Well, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's great to connect with everybody again. So I hope you enjoy the episode. Hey, everybody. I was in Encino, California the other day at a meeting, and I get out of there, and I'm hungry as can be, man. And there's traffic, LA traffic. And I'm thinking, I got to get some side streets here like my dad did in Wrigley. And I wind up at Coldwater Canyon and Riverside Drive, and there's Gino's East Pizza. Boom, park the car, go inside, and I order a tavern pizza, cheese and sausage, my favorite, top 3 foods of all time. And there's the owner, Dan and Todd, and they're like, hey, man, you're on the TV. I'm like, yeah, right, guys. They love to razz me once in a while. And sure enough, I was. My dad's documentary from MLB was playing. But I had no time for that. I had to eat my pizza. I devoured that thing in a minute. I was so hungry. You got to go to Gino's East for the greatest pizza around. Gino's East, LA. Put it in your Google's map right now. It's going to be our place to go, me and Christy, on Friday's happy hour. Go to Gino's East, right near Coldwater Canyon and the 101. Put it in your Google's map now. We'll see you there.
So my dad was the kind of guy, too. You had some good fun with him, too, joking around with him because he was so emotional.
Yeah.
He would swing back and forth, especially when you put that timer in.
We used to have a lot of fun. But, you remember that, huh? They talked about that.
Man.
We was in New York. And Ronnie got a bunch of threats in New York. They said the phone rang, and Ronnie answered the phone and said, if you're at third base, we're going to shoot number 10, and they did that a couple of times. And, everybody knew where we lived, and they would call, dial the phone, and they rang right to your room. And, of course, they called Ronnie several times, and Ronnie didn't finish the series up in New York, so they sent him back home to Chicago.
Yeah.
So, we found out that all this was happening. We had a big meet. Said, Ronnie got to go back to Chicago because he's getting some threats here in New York. So I think when we got back to Chicago, we played a game, and, of course, that morning it started to rain, so we didn't get a chance to go on the baseball field. So my chair was in the locker. Beckett was next to me, and of course your father was next to Beckett. All right, the three of us was lined up.
Right.
And after he got all of those threats in New York, I got a ball. in the box, and I called the clubhouse guy, the little kid running around. I said, "Listen, take this. I got it. Get the train a timer." And I put it in the box, and I said, take this all the way up to the office and have a stamp on it and come and sit by Sano's locker, And because he had gotten those threats, I think he's panicking anyway. So Beckett and I, we talked about it. This is what we're going to do, okay? So the bat boy took the timer up at the office. They got stamped, like it's in the mail. We get all our mail. They sit them down in front of our locker. And when he brought this timer down and put it in front of Sano's locker, and all of a sudden Beckett, we had this plan, and we asked each other, Beck, say, what did I hear ticking? And I had asked Beck, say, what is that ticking? And Beck said, I don't know. I say, something ticking down in front of Sano's locker. So jumped up and ran upstairs. And Sano grabbed that thing and said, it's a bomb. So he took it and hailed it out. And I think it went in the fire station across the street over there. And the train and run around and said, who got my timer? Who got my timer? Who got my timer? So that was one of the thrills that we got that day. We wasn't playing. You find something to do when you're not on the baseball field playing.
Yeah.
But this is what we did. Had a lot of fun with it. Because of everything that happened in New York, the threats and everything, I think, it really went over big with him, but and we had a lot of fun with that, and I think we went out and won the game.
Oh, that's great, man. Yeah, that death threat thing was kind of scary. I remember that. That was, Billy, I want to ask you about, because I think that happened. It started with the whole Don Young thing, and that trickled. And anyway, that's why I think that whole thing was tough for a lot of people. But you loosened him up, and that was my dad. It was like he just continued on.
We always did that to loosen him up a little bit because he was, he was strung tight. Your father. He was always strung tight when something happened. Because anywhere we played, I remember Gene Mark when we used to go to Montreal to play, and Gene Mark was managing third base, and they would always get on Ronnie. They would get on him and try to get under skin and everything, and Ronnie played right into the hand, of some of them. But there are times he went out and played. There could be 50,000 people in the stand cheering for Ronnie, cheering. But you get that one guy, boo. He gonna see that one guy. He's gonna see that one guy. That was your father. That was your father.
That was him,
yeah.
man. That
but
was
he
him.
He was good at that. We had as I say, we had a great time together. But I knew him like a book. You know, we started out in Double-A baseball, and I knew him down there. We, charging guys from home plate. You know, getting the pitches and stuff. Got throw at him, knock him down, and he charged the mound, get everybody going, and man, he was something. He was something. But he wanted to win so bad.
He did want to win so bad.
He was a gamer. He was a gamer. Yeah.
So were you, Billy?
A gamer. Yeah.
You guys all were gamers, and it was just that's how you guys played, and his emotional stuff. Sometimes people didn't like, but you knew him, and Beck knew him, so the guys knew, that really knew him.
Oh, yeah. Everybody on the ball club knew Ronnie. Yeah.
So that's kind of what drove him too. It's like that was his driving force. It was his passion. So it's like you had to live with that. It's just who he was. And sometimes it could push people the wrong way, but ultimately he was about the team and he was about winning and all that. So but getting to you, Billy, with you're an amazing family man. And can you talk about that strength of family growing up in Whistler, Alabama?
Well, I always, family is a big part of my life. When I grew up, my grandfather, used to do a lot of things with the families. I have 4 aunts, 3 uncles, and we all get together on a weekend at his home. And I saw that as a young man, and I saw how the family got together, how the family did things. And, of course, Shirley and I got married in 1960 down in Houston, and Shirley and I had the 3 girls. So, it became a thing to me. Family is everything. You want to enjoy your family. You want to take care of them. And, of course, when I moved to different places, I always brought my family there. And I always been a family man. And I see my daughters now. I see my grandkids now. I see them seeing how I want to live, how I want to be with my family. And they all enjoy that. But even now, at the house, we always have a big family reunion, having everybody here, because my daughters are right around me. They all live here in Glen Allen. Yeah. So family always been a big thing for me.
Yeah. Now, your dad played baseball, too. Didn't he play semi-pro?
Yeah, he played semi-pro with Satchel Paige and a guy by the name of Bill Robertson who lives in Chicago, played with the Chicago American Giants. But growing up in Alabama, in Mobile, Alabama, that was a hotbed of baseball players. I was always at a baseball game. Seeing guys play when I was like 15, 14 years old. And my brother played on the Mobile Black Bears with Henry Aaron. Go watch him play. Henry Aaron was the second baseman for the Mobile Black Bears, and my brother was a pitcher. My older brother was a pitcher. So they played baseball together. And I used to go down and watch them play. And we had so many great baseball players in Mobile, and of course, none of them wanted to leave home to play. And I said, "Let me get a contract. I'm out of here," But as far as Satchel Paige, Double Duty Radcliffe, and of course, now we have Cleon Jones, Tommy Agee, Willie McCovey. A lot of people don't know, but Arthur Smith was born in Mobile, Alabama. So when I see him, I call him homie all the time. Yeah, but that was a hotbed for baseball, and when you're playing when you're like 14 or 15 years old. Matter of fact, when I got 16 or 17 years old, I was playing with guys like 25, and if you make a mistake playing a game of baseball, they will grab you right then and tell you, if you want to play this game, if you want to play baseball, you got to learn how to do it, what you just did. But this is just the thing they did. They helped the other guys.
Right. Wow. Was your dad a good mentor for you?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, I had a brother playing. He got up AAA in the Pirates organization. He was a good player. You know, he signed in 1955, and of course I in 1956. But at the end of the season, you know, we'll go home and you know, we sit around and talk baseball, and we'll get out in the yard and play catch with Daddy. Because, you know, he played with some great ones, man. Played with Satchel and played with, you know, Allison here. So, you know, he saw some good players, Double Duty, Ratcliffe, a whole bunch of guys.
You guys had such a good community of support. Like, my mom told me, though, like when in Double A, it was tougher for you guys, some of the black players down there in Double A, right? That's when you felt like just how you had to go to different places to eat. That was something that bothered you back then, right?
It really did. It really did, Jeff. You know, in 1959, you know, when you playing a game of baseball, you're riding up and down on the bus, and you know, your father and everybody else go in the restaurant, and they could go in and sit down at a table and eat, and we had to depend on somebody to bring food on the bus for us. And I think this was the downtime of playing, you know, professional baseball. And it was tough. It was tough. I think that one of the things that happened, you know, because, you know, J.C. Hartman was a teammate of mine. And most of the time they put guys together. And J.C. Hartman was a good teammate of mine, so we used to have a lot of fun. And we found things to do and try to get us away from, you know, all this kind of prejudice and all that kind of stuff.
And that got to a point where you went home, right? For a time, you got so fed up.
I did. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, this is when we came back off a road trip. I think we was in Albuquerque or somewhere, so we riding up and down the street, going back to San Antonio, Texas. And when we got back to San Antonio, Texas, I told J.C. Hartman, my roommate, I said, listen, I want you to take me to the train station. And J.C. asked me, well, where are you going? I said, I'm going home. I said, I'm tired of this stuff, man. I don't want to play no more. So J.C. said, I'm not going to take you to the train station. You don't need to go home. You're playing the game of baseball, man. So when J.C. said that, I said, well, if you don't take me, I'm going to grab a cab anyway. So J.C. says, so you serious about it, aren't you? I said, yes, I am. So Jay took me down to the train station. I went home, stayed about 5 days. And, of course, Buck O'Neill came down there because I was making so much progress in the minor league. John Holland sent Buck O'Neill down there. This is Double A. Buck O'Neill, John Holland sent Buck O'Neill down there, and Buck stayed down there about 4 or 5 days. And after then, I said, I'm ready to go back now, Buck. So I went back, and this is when they called me to the big league. Called me to AAA. And then I came to the big league, and then, you know, I stayed up here a while and didn't do anything, so I was sent back down the following year, 1960. But I was ready to quit. I was ready to quit because I just had got tired, you know.
Yeah, that's.
But I'm glad Buck came down there. It was It was really one of the turning points of my career, and I always thank John Holland sending Buck O'Neill there to give me some confidence to come back. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the community part of it, right? I mean, that's what's so cool. It's like you were meant to play baseball, Billy. That would have been horrible if you did, you know. But I totally understand. You know, you just said screw it, right? I don't need this. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, a lot of times you get through it. You know, you get through a lot of stuff. But I just didn't want to get through it at the time. I just wanted to go home. Of course, the day before, my brother called me and said how much fun they had in Mobile. And I said, shit, I'll come down there and join you in the next couple of days, you know.
right.
You know, one of the biggest things happened with Buffalo. He said, he asked me the question and said, where do you play baseball at when you were growing up? And do they have a game down there today? And I said, yeah, they probably have a game. They have a game every day, you know. So we went down there. Buck took me down to watch the guys play baseball. And Buck and I standing there, and a lot of guys come up, friends of mine who went to school together and live in the community. They came up and they started asking me, say, Billy, where have you been? I haven't seen you, around during the summer. And I told them that I was out playing baseball. I was playing professional baseball to different cities, and they always said that I bet that's a lot of fun, man. You go and play. It's something you always want to do. You're playing professional baseball, and several guys, started talking, and the joy they got for me playing professional baseball, and said, I want to do that, man. That's good. So Buck standing back, he knew what was happening. Buck standing back knew what was happening. And these guys got under my skin. I said, Buck, I'm ready to go back now. So I went back, and of course, everything started from there.
Yeah, that's a great story, Billy. Wow, man. And, it's amazing, man. And I, getting back to 69 on how the season ended, did you – there's a lot of people that would said that DeRocher was to blame for not sitting the players. My dad would always say, I didn't want to sit. You played in 900 consecutive games at the time. You weren't coming out of the lineup. What's your thoughts on all that about DeRocher?
No, that was just an excuse. Somebody took that and ran with it. Because I think in the clubhouse, Leo asked, anybody tired, anybody wanted out of the lineup, and nobody said anything. Because we got us there. And we were going to be in the lineup. We wanted to play to win. We were used to playing day games. And I love day games. You go out in the morning, you play baseball, you come back and enjoy your family. You go out to dinner and enjoy your family. But that's the way that's what happened when you come to Chicago at that time. You're playing all day games. And I enjoyed it. I didn't get tired. I just, I got my rest. And I think most of the guys that were playing every day got their rest because they knew that they had to go out there the next day to play the game of ball.
Right.
We didn't want any rest. We don't wanted to play the game because, we wanted to win. And I think a lot of people use this as an excuse to, because we were playing all day games, we didn't win. And I don't think so. I think at the end, the Mets just had a great pitching, Tom Seaver, Gentry. So Boda making those great plays out in right field. A.G. playing good. Cleon Jones playing good. Matter of fact, Cleon and Jones and Tommy A.G., we went to the same high school. So when they come to Chicago, Shirley would cook a big meal, and when I go up there, we go out to dinner. But it just happened that they played great baseball at that time of year. I think they played over 700% of baseball at that time.
Yeah.
And that's why they won with the pitching. The pitching came on at the right time. And this is one of the reasons why I said, if you got a good pitching staff and keep everybody healthy, you can win baseball games.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go, man. And when you guys started in 1970, did you feel you were just as good as you were in 69 in the 70 season?
We did. I think so. We had it. The ball club was still intact. And we started out playing good. We played good. And everybody was looking at the Mets again, but I think the Cardinals won. I don't know who won that particular year, but I looked at our ball club at that year. We didn't win in 69, but we looked forward to 1970. We could win in 1970,
Yeah. Boy, Billy, you had an amazing year. You just had an amazing career, but in 70, you had MVP numbers in 70 and 72. Johnny Bench got it both times. That just seems like, boy, you had better numbers than him.
Yeah, well, looking over, playing with the Cubs and everything, I think I really could have won it in 1972. 1972, winning the batting title and driving in all those runs and stuff. And 1972, I was the player of the year that particular year. I don't know how many guys won the player of the year and then win most valuable player.
Yeah,
so
it's unbelievable.
I think one of the 2 years, I should have been the most valuable player. Not taking nothing away from Bench,
Oh,
He's a great
absolutely.
baseball player, and
No
he
doubt.
had some great years. But I think one of those years, 1970 or 1972, the most valuable player should be connected with my name.
Yeah, and plus, Billy, you had the consecutive game streak. How did and that went to 1970. How did you play in all those games, 1,117, and not get hurt? And were you ever hurt during all that?
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing. You know, you're lucky to play in a lot of ball games like that. And I remember we playing in Cincinnati, coming up to 1969. They're about to have a day for me in Chicago, and I remember the first game in Cincinnati. I fouled a ball off my ankle, and so happened we had the next day off, and Al Schoenman and I spent the whole day at the ballpark. I would put ice on it. I'd get in the whirlpool. Put ice on it. Get in the whirlpool. Because I knew Chicago had planned a big day for me in Chicago. And after 2 or 3 days, you know, I could limp around. I could move around. And I got a chance to play. I played that particular day. So you got to be lucky to play in that many games. And, you know, that's why I have so much respect for a guy, you know, like Cal Ripken Jr. You know, he played so many games. You got to play and not get hurt. You know, you're doing the things that help your baseball team win ball games. You're sliding hard. You know, you're doing everything. You're diving at balls, and you could easily get hurt. But you got to be lucky to play in that many games.
Yeah, man, you were unbelievable. Such an Iron Man, and then also you didn't get. To me, you're a great left fielder too. You ranked in 5th in the National League in games played in left field. You know, 4th in fielding percentage. Mm-hmm. I mean, you were a great left fielder too. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like you didn't get really the credit like out there, like as a left fielder?
Sometimes you don't get credit, and you know, as long as I go out and satisfy myself, this is one of the things that I wanted to do. I knew if I satisfied myself as playing the game of baseball, a lot of the fans and everybody else going to be happy. Because I didn't hold back. I dove at balls. I tripped over the mound in left field in Wrigley Field, a pitcher's mound. Now they got a bullpen. But I played hard, and you know, I did what I had to do to make the plays, and it was just a thrill for me. You sit around now and you think about, you know, the game of baseball and what you did in the game, and it's been fantastic.
Yeah, Billy, God. It was. I mean, I remember me and Ronnie would come in the late innings and watch out of the door there, and you'd always nod to us, you know, in left field. Just the memories we have, and, you know, just great, man. And you and my dad, just your careers are so intertwined. It's a bit overwhelming just talking to you now after all these years.
Yeah, we have a lot of memories, Jeff. You know, with me and your father, with Joe and Jerry at the ballpark, with Jeff and you, Jeff and Ronnie, and it was a great thrill. It was a great thrill. We were together for so long. Yeah, and we saw you guys grow up from being born. You know, just to be around you guys, to see you grow up as teenagers and as an adult. You know, we saw that because we were together for so many years, and we saw a lot of things that goes along with families playing the game of baseball. Yeah, and just enjoying family, and I think this is what we was all about.
Yeah, it really, really was, and you know, that part of my life, that childhood was amazing. You don't know any different because that's what you're born into. But as time goes on, you look back and you go, "Wow, man! You know, I just so many great memories, and just like I said, I just love being around you guys because you guys were so special, and your family too. And Shirley was amazing.
Yeah, you just have to treasure those memories because we had some great times together. Yeah,
yeah. And my mom said hello to you. Just said, you know, just please say hello to him. So
yeah. I was thinking about the other day when they used to have a radio show here, and you see all Judy, Mary, whole bunch of guys did a show, and I have a picture of that. I'm gonna find it somewhere and shoot it to you where you can show it to her and see it, because she probably haven't seen this picture in a long time. This time I got it in the box, and I remember the time we had our basketball team, during the 69 season. We enjoyed that. We see you guys around. You get on the court and you shoot around with us, and just run on the basketball court, and we just enjoyed that, because
we sure did, man.
As I said, we saw some of you born, saw some of your teams, and saw some of you being young men.
Yeah, really, it's just thanks so much for coming on. I really can't thank you enough. And you sound great, man. How's everything for you right now? Everything okay?
Everything is going along pretty good, Jeff.
Okay, good. Please say hello to the family from the Santa family.
It's nice chatting with you, and it's nice to go down memory lane, with you, because we had so much fun. Yeah.
Yeah, right. It was just great. I want to ask one last question. Why do you think today in baseball there's less black players than there was when you played? Why do you think that is?
It's a tough thing. I think, because, it's said that a lot of scouts don't want to go in the area to scout these individuals, and a lot of times, you have a few college guys going to college, and most of the time this is where you go and get players to play minor league baseball from colleges, But we got to do something about that. I know every year they talk about it. Talk about it for 2 weeks. You got to sign more black scouts to go in these areas to sign black ball players.
Yeah.
And if you sign a lot of black ball players, like you go to Puerto Rico, Dominican, you don't have the facilities that you have over here that you have down there. Most of the clubs down there, they have facilities. They work with these kids when they're 14 or 15 years old down there. And then this is why you see a lot of foreigners playing the game of baseball.
Right.
And if they could do something down in Florida like that, and send some guys down there to play, have an academy that you have a lot of black players down there. I think Kansas City did at one time. They had a academy where they had a lot of black players playing, and a lot of them came to the big league. So you have to do something.
Yes.
First of all, to get the black scouts, you got to go. They got to go in these cities to sign players, and get them in the minor league, and you could bring them to the big league if they are good players.
Right. And man, What's your take? Last thing, what's your take on, like, when you guys played? You were so disciplined at hitting. You guys, you didn't want to strike out. All these strikeouts today. A lot of these guys couldn't play back then with their striking out as much as they are today. What do you think of all that?
Yeah, well, there are different things come into baseball, and came into baseball in the last couple of years is the launch angle, because they pay for hitting home runs, and I think everybody come up to the big league now is taught down in the minor league. You hit home runs, you're going to get a big paycheck, and this is what happened. Guys strike out. They either hit the ball out the ballpark, strike out. And they feel that, it's nothing striking out. If guys strike out 150, 200 times now, you come to plate that and strike out that many times, you're not going to hit that much. But many years ago, as players, when your father played, striking out was a big thing. I could go to the plate 600 times, and I only struck out 66 times a year. And that means I put the ball in play to get a base hit. And, when you strike out, that means you didn't do nothing, man. You didn't put the ball in play, you ain't gonna get no base hits if you do that. So you wanted to make contact with the baseball. Sometimes, guys choke up. Many years ago, they choke up, to keep from striking out, because the striking out was a no-no, unless you hit 40, 50 home runs. A guy do that, he could strike out a little bit because he's trying to hit the ball out the ballpark, and he does it. But the launch angle is in baseball now. And, of course, you got some great pitchers now. They throw pretty hard now, and they throwing variety of pitches now. They throw all kind of pitches now, plus everybody come out of the bullpen. We saw one guy for about 8 innings.
Yeah.
Because they didn't have the setup man. Only had 9 to 10 pitches. I remember one year we left spring training with 9 pitches because we had 4 starters that go, 9 innings, and we had some guys that go 8, and we had Phil Reagan to come in. He wasn't named a closer per se, but he just go in the game at the end. But you get about 2 or 3 pitches a game now, and it's a little different hitting now, because you can still make contact and not strike out.
Yeah, exactly, Billy. All right, Billy. Thanks so much, Billy. Again, please say hello to your family for me, and I hope I get to see you soon, man.
All right, Dan. It was nice chatting with you. As I say, it was nice going down memory lane, just talking about what happened the past years. Yeah. So you take care, man.
I sure will, Billy. All right.
Take care.
Thanks,
tell everybody hello. All right.
I sure will,
Bye.
Billy. Okay. Goodbye now.
That moment was brought to you by Tangent West, executive recruiters. Headquartered in Denver, with offices in Vail, Colorado, and New Orleans. Since 1995, Tangent West has conducted executive searches nationally and internationally. They place C-level executives, management positions, high-level executive assistants, marketing and accounting, and finance. Cheryl Grimaldi, president, has personally interviewed over 36,000 candidates and has filled over 2,500 searches. I've known Cheryl for decades. She's a dear family friend and someone you can trust. She's been at this for a long time. Tangent West, hunting human excellence and building the country's finest companies since 1995, because nothing matters more than hiring the right people. If you're hiring, go to www.tangentwest.com.
Crackerjack.
Hello.
This call is being recorded.
Ed Lynch.
Is this Jeff Sano?
Ha! Ed Lynch. You are my crackerjack.
How are you?
Call.
Hey, let me call you up on my 38:33 on my 39-minute workout. Let me call you back in about a minute.
I'll call you back, okay? Because I gotta have an app that records us. Okay.
No problem. See ya.
For my
Bye.
crackerjack call. Awesome.
This call is being recorded.
Hello.
Ed, Jeff Santo.
Jeff. Hey.
How are you, man?
Good.
You're my crackerjack call. I know you don't really know what that is, but I got a podcast now. But it's a good thing, man, because the crackerjack call is always someone that it's like family. So your family, my dad and you were really close, man, and you got the same birthdays.
I appreciate that. Same birthday.
So, yeah, man. How have you been doing?
I'm doing good in the real estate business down here in Scottsdale, and interesting, crazy market, but things are going well.
Good, man. Good. I know it's hot out there right now because my mom and brother and sister are out there.
Yeah, I don't know if hot's the right word, but it is hot.
Yeah, man. Every summer,
but there's no humidity, though. No humidity.
No, yeah, right? That dry heat. Yeah. Like a blow dryer right in your face. Oh, my God. Hey, Ed, I had no idea. I'm looking at your career and a lot of things I want to talk to you about, but your pitching career, man, boy, your timing on that with the 86, I had no idea you went down with a knee injury, huh?
Yeah, I hurt my knee in spring training. Chris Pitaro of the Twins hit a swinging bunt off to the left front of the mound, and my left foot planted. I turned to field it, and I could hear a pop at my knee, and I tore the meniscus in my knee. But I finished the spring, and And then opening day, I was on the 25-man roster, and then I had an outing in Philadelphia, 2 1/3 innings, and my knee blew up like a balloon and had surgery, and then was on the DL. Back then, surgery took a lot longer than it does now, but went on the DL, and then I went down to AAA on a rehab, and after my rehab, I knew I wasn't coming back to New York. They had the best pitching staff in the league, and I had beat the Mets in an arbitration case that winter, so I was kind of like persona non grata, and they had, the 10th pitcher on the team when I was coming to come back was Rick Aguilera, who was a heck of a pitcher, who I wound up trading for later on, ironically. But, he was a lot cheaper than me, so I knew it was coming. It's a business, as you well know.
Yeah, man, but, your pitching career, you're from Miami, which, okay, and you got drafted, in 77?
Yeah, 77 as a college senior.
Wow, man. Okay. And then but you had a pretty good earned run average, and then you started building up because you were with the Mets in 81 when they weren't so good, just like the Cubs weren't that great in the early 80s. And all of a sudden, both teams got to be real competitive, 84 Cubs and then obviously the 86 Mets. And you were one of the starters, man, right?
Yeah, well, I started in 83 and 85, parts of 84. But, every time I turn around, another young kid was coming from the minor leagues or for the trade, Ron Darling, Sid Fernandez, Dwight Gooden, Bobby Ojeda. So, and then the relievers, guys like Jesse Orozco and Roger McDowell. And so, every day they added another quality pitcher. So they got good really quick in a different way. The Cubs were a veteran club back then. And we were a very young club. We had the youngest club in baseball in 1984. And that's why we couldn't beat the Cubs. We won 90 games and went home because the Cubs were that veteran club and Rick Sutcliffe was unhittable. And we just weren't going to beat a veteran club like that. They knew how to go wire to wire. Our guys got a little tired in September. But, it was a lot of fun. We had a lot of good young players, and eventually it turned into a World Series championship.
Yeah, so do you think if you didn't get hurt, how much do you think you would have pitched in 86?
I probably would have been doing the role that I did in 84. I probably would have been spot starter, long reliever, but, a long reliever on that club wasn't going to get a lot of work, because they had a very solid starting rotation, starting Dwight Gooden, Ron Darling, Sid Fernandez, and then, they added Bob Ojeda, who won 18 games that year. So, they had a very solid rotation. So I would have, been a spot starter, long reliever.
And you got a ring though, still, right? Obviously.
Yes, I did. And the reason I got a ring is because I didn't rip the club when I left. It's amazing. We're leading the division by 25 games when I got traded on June 30th, and the writers are kind of coming in trying to get me to badmouth the team. I said, "What are you guys out of your mind? There's 25 games in first place. I'm going to rip them for what? Trading Ed Lynch? Come on, it's serious,
Right.
And I think Frank Cashin appreciated that, so. He called me after the World Series and said, I was going to get a ring, and I appreciate that. It's something my family will cherish, So,
yeah, man.
We parted on good terms.
Yeah, and plus you put a lot of years in, man. Good outings from 81 to 85. Bill James said that you were the best control pitcher in the major leagues.
Well, that's the thing. When I was coming up, you were taught to pitch to contact. You were taught to throw strikes. You didn't try to strike people out. I didn't strike anybody out, but more importantly, I didn't walk anybody. So that was the way we were taught. And obviously the game's different now. You're taught to pitch away from contact. You're taught to throw everything as hard as you can. And, the way to get to the big leagues now is to light up the gun and have spin rate. But, back then, it was like put the ball in play and let the defense work behind you. And I was very lucky to be on good defensive clubs. So, that helped a lot.
Yeah, man. And speaking of after your injury, you did an about face. You went and got your law degree, and then you became a general. Talk about that.
Well, I retired after the 87 season. I was pretty much shot mentally and physically. My knees were hurting. My arm was dead. So I said, how do I separate myself from every other 32-year-old guy out there that's trying to get a job with no experience, So I figured, my brother was a lawyer at the time, so I applied to University of Miami Law School, and one of the weirder things ever happened to me. The summer before I started law school, I was in New York visiting some of the guys on the team, and Richard Nixon was at the game, and I had known Richard Nixon through Keith Hernandez. He was a big baseball fan, big sports fan. He came out to the ballpark all the time, so he was in the ballpark that night. And he said, it was like a guy doing a bad Richard Nixon imitation. He said, what are you doing now? And I said, well, I'm applied to University of Miami Law School, and I haven't heard back. And he goes, would you want me to write you a letter of recommendation? I said, well, please, Mr. President. So he writes a letter of recommendation at University of Miami Law School. I get a call from the admissions office. They thought it was a joke. And they said, we don't take kindly because it's not a joke. I said, it's not a joke. I know the guy. So so I had to go down there with a picture of me and Tricky Dick, before we had lunch one day, and then they believed me. But I don't know if you get a worse recommendation to law school with all those liberals down there. Jesus Christ.
That's a great story, man.
But I still got
awesome.
in though. So.
you got it, and then you come out, and how did you do? Were you going for the general manager job? Is that what you wanted?
No. I was in the last year of law school. I went full time. I wanted to get in and out of there as fast as I could. So I went full time day student. Then I went all through the summers. So I graduated in December. The rest of my class graduated the following May. So and I was graduating December of 1990. Now in October of 1990. The guy that I knew from the Mets, who was a scouting director and head of player personnel for the Mets, a guy named Joe McIlvaine, he got the job as the GM in San Diego in, I want to say, September of 1990. And he called me up and said, would you be interested in being the director of player development? And I said, absolutely, So I accepted that job 2 months before I graduated from law school. I was fully prepared to I wanted to be a civil litigator because that was the thing that I thought would be most like being in a ball game. You have to think on your feet. There's pressure. There's a definitive winner and loser. There's a specific beginning and end. I didn't want to be sitting in a cubicle in the back of the 40th floor somewhere shuffling papers. I wanted to be on my feet in front of people arguing cases, and that's what I really wanted to do. And but when I got offered that job, I just couldn't turn it down. So I went to San Diego right after I graduated, January 1st of 1991. Went out to San Diego and was the director of player development, basically the farm director there for 91, 2, and 3. And then Joe McIlvaine got fired by the Padres and went to New York as a GM, and I went with him as the assistant GM in 93, at the end of 93. And then in 94, I was with the Mets as assistant GM. And then the strike hit, if you remember.
Oh, yeah.
So during the strike, Andy McPhail calls Joe and wants to interview me for the GM job in Chicago, and I got the job during the strike in 1994.
That's amazing, man. Wow, what a quick ascension there.
Yeah,
but you were prepared. Yeah, but you were ready. Now, when you got to the Cubs, what was that like?
Well, the organization, I tell this story, I laugh about this story. A good buddy of mine, Dana Brown, just became the general manager of the Houston Astros. Now, usually you don't become the general manager of the defending world champion. You usually become the general manager of a team that's terrible, and the Cubs were terrible in 93 and in 94 before the strike. They were bad. They were a bad team. Yep. They had no farm system. So I came in there, and it was in 95, everything seemed to click for us in 95. We got lucky here and there. It was the first year of the wild card, and we actually went down to the last weekend of the year in the wild card race, and then I think the Rockies were the wild card that year. So 95 was an interesting year, but we had trouble selling out Wrigley Field then. The fans were pissed off, Jeff, as you remember.
Yeah.
I remember John McDonough, who you know well, was our director of marketing, and I remember in 95, I wanted to invite a bunch of family up to Chicago for get a luxury suite. And I was like, oh, I don't know if I can get that. And I called John and say, John, do you have any luxury suites? He goes, take your pick. Any game during early in the 95 season, half the luxury suites weren't sold. That's how pissed off the fans were, So, we slowly had to win back their favor, and it got better each year. And then when Sammy, went on his thing and Mark McGuire, it all blew up then, So, and they've been on a run since that day, since 98,
Right.
They've been on a run, and it capped off with a World Series championship in 2016.
Right. And 98 was kind of a good year, right? You guys had a decent. You got there.
It was an amazing year. It all started on February 14th, Valentine's Day that year. Harry Carey drops dead in Palm Springs, California. And then, we start the season in May. I brought up Kerry Wood. He punches out 20 guys in his fifth start. And then Sammy hits like 25 home runs in June to set a record. And then the rest of the year, we had this race, us, the Giants, and the Mets. For the whole second half, we never got more than a game and a half or 2.5 games between the three of us. Right. And then it came down to the last game of the season, and we got into a one-game playoff. And then we played the Giants in a one-game playoff at Wrigley Field, which to this day is the most exciting, high-pressure game I've ever been involved with. And, luckily, we won that game, but then we got beat by the Braves in the National League Division Championship Series.
Right. Was that the Brown ball game year? Was that the no call? It was, wasn't it?
Oh my God! I heard the replay of that. I was sitting. It was in Milwaukee. I'm sitting in Bud Selig's box with Andy McPhail, and the radio booth is right next to us. And after he drops the ball, I'm thinking, is somebody getting knifed to death in our radio booth? And it was your dad. Like, oh God, no! I thought he was in there getting murdered or something. That's how much he loved the Cubs, and that's how much passion he had for the game, but especially for the Cubs. You talk about bleeding Cubby blue, for Christ's sake. You know that better than anybody.
Yeah, man. And that's where you guys you got really close, is during those years, right? Traveling with him.
Yeah.
Yeah, he loved to talk baseball and find out what's going on the inside, so I'm sure you guys had a lot of conversations.
Yeah, well, that GM job's a lonely job, I mean, you can't really, you'll talk to the manager at the ballpark, but if you want to go out for dinner and have a couple of pops, it's, the person to do it with would be like the radio guy and your dad. We had so much in common other than the same birthday. He was a player, I was a player. So we talked like players talk. And so he really was my companion on the road, all the time, At home, we went our separate ways, but on the road, he was like my closest friend.
Oh, that's great, man. What were some of the good hires that guys that you signed through those years from, what was it, 94 to 2000?
Yeah. Well, we drafted Kerry Wood in 95.
That's the best. Yeah, that's
and I think the best trade I made, I traded Brant Brown for John Lieber, who wound up winning 20 games and being an all-star for us. So
yeah, that's a great trade.
We drafted a lot of guys, and some of them made them, some didn't. But those two are the two transactions that stand out the most for me.
Yeah. And after your job was over with the Cubs, where did you go from there? In the scouting, right?
Yeah, I became a major league scout, and I moved here to Arizona. That was 2001. And then I scouted for the Cubs for 10 years, and then I got a call from the Toronto Blue Jays. It was time for me to move on. So I worked for the Blue Jays for Alex Anthopoulos, who's now the GM of the Braves. And my direct report was Perry Manassian, the pro scouting director, who's now the GM of the Angels. So I had 6 really good years there. And then, believe it or not, we went to 2 straight American League Championship Series. And then all of a sudden they brought in Mark Shapiro, who basically fired Alex Anthopoulos, moved Perry Manassian out, and got rid of everybody. I couldn't believe it. And so that was my last year. 2016 was my last year in professional baseball as a scout.
Wow, man. Wow. So you also were there in the transition from basically the old scouting to Moneyball. What was that like, and what do you think of that and where we are now?
Well, we all used we all used numbers. We all looked at numbers and to evaluate players' performance. And I didn't have any problems with analytics. Analytics is valuable if you want to use it for this tool. I think it's okay. You use analytics to evaluate a player's performance. But when analytics becomes a style of play, then I think it gets a little dangerous. I think it gets a little counterproductive. I mean, they talk about launch angle. When I was a kid, they called it an uppercut. And the focus is on spin rate and velocity, and hitters swinging as hard as they can with an uppercut. So when you have a pitcher out there throwing the ball as hard as he can all the time, and you have hitters in there swinging as hard as they can, it's going to add up to several things. The most important things are injuries are going to go up, certainly for pitchers.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Walks are going to go through the roof, and strikeouts are going to go through the roof. We set records in walks and strikeouts every year since this has become, the standard in the industry. I think you win championships with guys like your dad, guys with heart and soul, and who go out there and play hurt. And, and that's how you win championships. You don't win championships with numbers, because you can make numbers say whatever you want them to say. But, hey, I understand the value of analytics if it's used in the area where I think it should be used, to evaluate players rather than teaching them a style of play.
Yeah, I think it overtook the game, and we saw that happening. And people were going away from the game. Like you said, those numbers are ridiculous. Like in my dad's era, and even after, the guys were disciplined hitters. Like my dad had as many walks as strikeouts as a power hitter. They don't have that anymore. These guys are striking out 4 times more than they're walking, and it's ugly to watch.
10 times.
Yeah, 10 times. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember Rusty Staub used to tell me when he would go to an All-Star game back in the 60s, like in your dad's era. Rusty was an All-Star probably for the first time in like 64, 5, 6, in that era. If you had more strikeouts than walks, guys would make fun of you. Like, what are you doing, man? You're not a good hitter. You strike out more than you walk. And now, and it's one thing if you have a hitter who's going to hit 45 home runs and he strikes out 150 times or 200 times like they're doing now. Well, that's all well and good to have 1 or 2 guys like that in your 4 and 5 hole in the middle of the lineup. But when you got leadoff men or 8-hole hitters striking out 150 times, that's not good. You need somebody to be on base. You got to put the ball in play. Nothing good comes out of a strikeout. Nothing good can happen unless the catcher just misses the ball. That's about it.
Right. And the averages are just brutal. I'm just like, how are these guys? Some of these guys, I mean, there's obviously way more teams now, but these guys in the low averages, I'm like, wow, man. Hopefully now,
it's incredible.
Yeah. What do you think of the game today as far as speeding it up and everything?
Well, I'll tell you what, I call it the shot clock. The pitch clock, that has changed the game. It really has. It was becoming unwatchable, Jeff. I mean, when you have a 3-hour and 23-minute, 3-1 9-inning game, that is not. We're in the entertainment business, and so we lost a ton of fans. I have to take my hat off to the commissioner, and the guys in New York, because that pitch clock has changed the game. You look at game times now. I see 2.5-hour games all the time. I've seen 2:05, 2:15. Yeah. It used to be. It's like they've taken a half hour off every game or more. It's incredible.
It is.
And I think it's good. I mean, now there's going to be pushback on it. There's always pushback on something like that. I heard. It's the reason why pitchers' injuries are going up. No, it's not. That's not the reason why. The reason that pitchers' injuries are going up is because they do so many non-specific work. I mean, they're in a weight room lifting weights and bulking up, and it takes more effort, and you have a higher chance of injury to move a muscle from point A to point B if it weighs more.
Yeah.
And I see starting pitchers in there doing 300-pound squats. I mean, why? And then you see guys with hamstrings and backs. How many young players have you seen in the last 10 years with hip replacements? I mean, that used to be for grandma. Now you got like 28-year-old guys getting hip replacements,
Yeah. It has changed a lot, man. Yeah, there's no doubt, man. I think you're right. The games are better because they were losing the TV audience too, going 3.5, 4 hours, and you have to speed it up. How come it was taking so long? In even your day and my dad's day, the games went pretty quick. These guys didn't, take all their time beyond the mound and at the plate.
Yeah, and I think another thing was pitching changes. I think they, have to face 3 hitters. I was dead against that rule. But now I realize, the way the analytics part of the game is, they'll have a different pitcher for every hitter, if you let them. So you got to throw face 3 hitters. So now it might affect the future of a situational left-handed pitcher, but that manager now has, when the analytic guy's saying, take him out, he says, wait a minute, if I take him out, he has to face the 2 guys behind him too, so let's just wait. And so it's cut down on pitching changes was probably the biggest reason the game was so slow. And the second thing is, your dad and I would argue about everything, and we finally came to the conclusion that if a hitter and a pitcher agree on everything, it's time to just blow up the whole thing because we're never going to agree on everything. He blamed the pitchers for slow game times. I blame the hitters, So, I mean, get in the box and hit, and get on the mound and throw the ball. I was always taught to work fast, throw strikes, and amazingly, they seem to play better defense behind you. I had other pitchers tell me, boy, you're lucky. I said, why? Well, they always play good defense behind you. Yeah, you know why? Because I get the ball and throw it. They're on their toes the whole game.
Yeah. Big difference.
And you remember watching Steve Traxel, who's a good friend of mine. I've done fantasy camps with him, but gee whiz, I remember guys would be infielders who'd be back there with their arms crossed, waiting for them to throw. And
right.
And and if you work fast, throw strikes, they play much better defense behind you.
Yeah. As a GM, former GM, do you see the future of the game being bright, or are we on an upswing now again, or what's your thoughts?
No, I really do see the game is on an upswing. I think the rule changes have been revolutionary in terms of making the game more watchable. We're in the entertainment industry,
Yep.
When push comes to shove, we're in the entertainment industry, and the game is a lot more entertaining. I think the game is strong. I think it's going to get stronger. I'd like to see more kids in the U.S. play the game more, just young American. I like to see more African Americans in the game.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of reasons why that's not happening. And some of them, I don't know, are able to be cured, but, I like to see more kids in this country playing the game. It's our sport. It's unique to America. We invented it. It's America's pastime. I'd like to see more young American kids playing baseball and support the Little League programs, support the high school programs, and get more kids out there playing. Because once you start playing this game and, you see how it's like a chess match, get the strategy back in the game. It's not just swing as hard as you can, try to hit a 3-run homer, moving runners along, stealing a base, things of that nature. It's a chess game, and it's an exciting game, and it's fun to play, and it's fun to watch if it's played correctly.
Yeah, well said, man. Because I asked Billy about that. I said, what is it now that you don't see as many black players as there were when Billy and my dad played, and he felt that not enough scouts are getting out into the areas to find these athletes.
I'll tell you what. I asked Billy the same question. Now, this is a little sensitive here,
Yeah.
Not sensitive. I asked Billy, I said, Billy, how in the hell did you, Henry Aaron, Willie Mays, come out of Mobile, Alabama playing baseball? And he goes, well, we couldn't play football at the University of Alabama.
Right.
This is pre-civil rights act days.
Right.
They couldn't play. They weren't allowed to play, to even attend these colleges. So they didn't play football, and they couldn't play basketball at Kentucky. I know that. So they played baseball.
Right. Yeah.
And let's face it. I think Title IX is one of the best things that's ever happened to amateur athletics. I'm 1,000% supporter of Title IX, but there are side effects to everything that's good. And, when baseball scholarships are limited to, 11.5 scholarships for 25 guys, a lot of these economically challenged kids, they can't afford to pay even half the tuition,
No.
I think back in 1975 when we lost Arizona State in the national championship game in Omaha when I was with South Carolina. Our center fielder was Mookie Wilson. They had 5 guys in their lineup, African Americans. UB Brooks, Ricky Peters, Bobby Pate, Kenny Landreau. All these guys were really good players. Now, I don't know if their families could pay half the tuition to attend a school like Arizona State. A lot of it's economic.
Yeah.
So
it is.
But obviously, Title IX must stay where it is. It's too important. But we got to think of other ways to get these African American athletes back on the baseball field.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And back when my dad and Billy played, they didn't have the draft back then, right? So, and a lot of guys went straight from high school, like my dad, inner city boy, straight from high school to being signed with the Cubs. And the communities were a lot better too. I think in all the areas of people helping each other out, especially where Billy came from. All those guys played baseball and they helped one another, and the elders helped them, looked out for them. So
there's no doubt,
it's a big community thing too, and
it
hopefully
absolutely is. And I've talked to some of those guys that played for Arizona State. All those guys, UB Brooks, Bobby Pate, Ricky Peters, Kenny Landreau, they all came from the Compton area and the LA area. And back then it was safe. They could go out and play baseball. The families supported it.
Yeah.
But the way crime is now and drugs and, it's just very difficult to feel safe and play the game. And I take my hat off to the commissioner. He's tried to establish that the academies in Compton and try to get people back to the game. So we just got to keep plugging along. And I'll tell you what, you got a much better chance of getting to the major leagues, to the highest level of your sport as a baseball player than you do in the NBA or the NFL. Plus, compared to the NFL, you can play in, how many times do you see a
longevity?
40-year-old? Yeah. I mean, I was watching the Met game, the last few days, and they had a 39-year-old starter and Max Scherzer, a 40-year-old starter and Verlander. You got 35 to 38-year-old guys all over the field, and you're just not going to do that in football. Plus, there's a lot of money to be made in baseball. There really is. As a high school kid, if you're a good athlete, you're going to make a lot of money. So that's the things we got to sell.
Yeah, you need the athlete. Yeah, there's no doubt about it, the good athlete. And those guys, back in my dad's day, they could play every sport. You know what I mean? My dad could do literally. They're playing every sport, and they're that good. And then you're talking about, you had 400 players when my dad started playing. Only 16 teams, so a lot harder to get there, right?
There's 30 teams now. So right now there are 100 players in the big leagues that would not have been there when I played in the 1980s. 4 full rosters of teams,
That's a lot.
So, so it's, the product is diluted somewhat, but it's still a great game and there are great young players. So it's exciting to watch.
It is. I think we're going in the right direction. I think, and get a little small ball coming back, like you said, more strategy, enough of this big, get a home run when, let's start playing smart. You're seeing it with the Reds they're looking exciting out there too. The Cincinnati Reds.
Exactly.
They're fun to watch.
When you see this, that's right. And the kid in Miami, I can't pronounce his name. About 2 weeks ago, he's hitting 400. Now, I haven't seen him play much. You can Google him, but I asked some scouts about him the other night when I was at the Met game here in Arizona. They said, he hits the ball like Rod Carew. He uses the whole field. And I'll tell you what, I'd rather have a guy on base 3 times a night rather than the guy that goes 1 for 5 with 3 strikeouts and a home run. I mean, when you're on, people don't understand when you're on the mound and there's people on base, it's a whole different mindset. It's a whole different strategy. The pressures are different, especially if that guy can run. If you got a guy on base, who can run. Look at the Cardinal teams in the '80s, man, with all those guys.
Oh God!
I mean, it was like a track meet every night. You put
Coleman
pressure on
and McGee.
everybody.
Yeah, they were unbelievable. Yeah, absolutely, man.
They really were. They really were.
Well, you spent so much time with my dad. I know you talked to him about the '69 season a lot, right?
Absolutely.
And I've been talking a lot about it on this show, and what went wrong, and how they didn't get there. I mean, Billy just said the Mets just played great in September, man. I mean, you just look at it, they were phenomenal. But also, people have talked about my dad had, that Don Young game stayed with our family for a while. We, got death threats and it turned into an ugly situation for a couple of years, with our family, my dad. And, did he ever talk to you about that Don Young game?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. He did. Absolutely. He did. And one thing he said to me, and I just watched the replay of the play, it was not an easy play. It's not like he was camped under the ball and it hit him on the head or anything like that.
Right.
I mean, he had to run all the way over to the opposite gap. And, he ran into the wall. And I pitched at that time of day in that ballpark. And that sun, if you look at the replay, Fergie's got his hat pulled down. That sun's right in his face.
Yeah.
So he's running. He's running to the left center field gap, and let me tell you something. Don Clendenin hit the crap out of that ball, and I showed it to my son. He said, "That's a double. That's not an error." And in the article, they said some stupid things in the article. Leo buried the guy, and they said, "Well, it's okay for a manager to criticize a player, but not a teammate." Who came up with that rule? I never heard that rule before.
Right.
Right. And you know what? I talked to your dad about it, and we both came to the conclusion, it's maybe talk to the analytic guys. Hey, these are human beings. It was a tough pennant race. The Mets were, like you said, the Mets. This is like July 8th has happened. I thought it was later, but it was July 8th.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But it was a big game, a big series. And I'm sure, Ronnie. They had this nuclear group of players, as you well know. And I can't believe how close all these players are. So you had Ronnie, you had Glenn Beckert, you had Billy, you had Ernie, you got Fergie, you got Randy, you got all the Kessinger. I mean, that group of guys were so tight. So I'm sure part of what pissed your dad off is that Fergie, lost the game, and so he's kind of like, not Fergie's defender. It's almost like, hey, if it happens to Fergie, it happens to me. You know what? If somebody insults your best friend, it's almost like they're insulting you, and you react. He reacted.
Yeah.
But the great thing about it was he apologized. He apologized publicly. Hey, your dad's Italian. You know what Italians? You guys get a little, emotional now and then.
I'd say, he was such an emotional guy, but. That game, like you said, first of all, it was July 8th. They had plenty of baseball after, and they started playing. They were up 8 games after that. They went from 4 to like 8.5 come September. But getting back to that game, my dad was more upset. Like, he had a neutral game, played well in the field. I don't know, maybe had a couple of hits, but nothing major. I mean, Fergie was winning that game, and he did say that Fergie was the most upset he ever saw Fergie after a loss. He never saw him that devastated. And at the same time, Don Young was there to play the field. He wasn't there to hit. They didn't expect him to hit. And he started getting cranky about his hitting, and he had a bad day hitting. And what happened is Jim Hickman was playing right that game. My dad told me, even in articles I've read, is that Hickman said to the kid, hey, told him to move over, and the kid told him to F off. And Hickman went and said, Ron, the kid's kind of losing him. So my dad got to Young in the dugout. I said, take it easy, man, just play. And when he went out to play in the 9th, he was thinking about his bat. But the thing is, that first ball that Fergie got, really, the leadoff hitter, what was his name? The second baseman, just
Boswell.
little Texas. Yeah, Boswell hit one that should have been. Ken Boswell hit one that should have been caught. It was an easy, and Young took a back step on it, and it dropped before him. That was the big one. And then the hard catch. And the other one was they were telling him to move more over to the left because Fergie was like he wouldn't move for him. And that was also, he had to run farther for that ball in the gap, which was a shot. There's no doubt. But it all came to where the kid, when they got to the locker room, and I know this is true, they got to the locker room, the kid wanted to leave in his uniform. Don Young wanted to walk out in his uniform. My dad said, get back to your locker. And then as soon as he heard Leo go, my 2-year-old could have caught those balls. The kid didn't even take a shower and just left and didn't take the bus. And that upset my dad more than anything. I think it's like that, his attitude. And then of course he let a couple things probably fly, because I don't know. It definitely wasn't said like the paper said. I know that, but I know that he said something to a fact of, the kid was thinking about his hitting and, whatever. But still, who cares? It's like, it's one game, and that's what happens when someone's not paying attention. And I don't want to get on Don Young so much, but the thing is, my dad did take a lot for that. And I don't know what the feeling was so much with the players. I know Fergie was hurt by the game. Billy seemed like, hey, Billy's the kind of guy, play the next game, move on. But did some of those guys take it personally with my dad on the team?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so at all. I don't think. Hey, listen, the Mets went out and I think finished the year. They went like 35-12. The last 6 weeks of the season. It didn't matter what the Cubs were going to do. I mean, but like you said, it was July, and it was a perfect storm. It was the leadoff double should have been caught. Fergie's out there throwing slider after slider after slider, telling them move over in the gap, and he doesn't. And then he leaves after the game. I mean, it was anything like that. It's not one reason; it's several. So, and again, he's trying to. It's like if my best friend, someone comes up and slaps my best friend, we're going to be fighting. So if Fergie took it hard, I'm going to take it hard. And your dad, he wore his emotions on his sleeve. Hey, I think it was forgotten. It's just the media loves to I guarantee you more people talk to your dad after that game than talk to anybody on the Mets, because they look for stuff like that, and I played in New York long enough to know how they work,
Yeah, exactly, man. They did. And, the thing is, it's just that season, like you said, that core group, it's just depressing thinking about that team never got to a playoff game when they should have, and it's kind of sad when you think about that part of it because my dad, all those guys wanted to win so much. But here's one question I got for you as a former general manager. I've done a lot of research on that team, and they didn't have a center fielder that spring. Well, they had Adolfo Phillips. But Don Young was out of baseball, living in California, in San Francisco. And that's the weird part. Like, he was like couch surfing and somehow was dating some ex-biker's girlfriend. That guy got pissed off. And word is, I read it, Rick Talley? No, Rick Talley. He wrote a book called The Cubs of '69. And he said that, he basically did a cold call to John Holland, the general manager, and said, you guys, I know you don't have a center fielder. I'd like to give it another try, because he was down in the minors for 5 years and basically came up for a cup of coffee in '65. And he said, come on down. And he showed that he played well in the outfield. And Leo's like, we're going to go with him, and told my dad to actually mentor him. And my dad did. He goes, the kid can't hit. We don't care. Just make sure he stays alert out in the field. So Leo put that on my dad as the captain to do that. But I'm thinking, why with that team so many years not getting there? I mean, the last time was, 45? Why would you put a kid like that in the lineup as your starting center fielder when you know that he doesn't have maybe the endurance of a whole season as a general manager?
Yeah. Well, it might have been money. It could have been, lack of a scouting department. I can't really answer that. But, the bottom line is, again, as I said at the top of the show, that was a tough play. I mean, if he makes that catch and they win the game and win the division, that's going to go back as top 5 plays of the year to help them win that division. I mean, if he makes that catch, that's a above average defensive play. They scored it a double. And back then, now everything's a hit. Everything is a hit.
Yeah. No
ground
doubt.
ball is short, goes through his legs. It's a hit. But back then, they called it a double, which it was. So
yeah.
I think it was just the perfect storm of emotions. It was hot. The pressure's on, 55,000 people there. One of his closest friends lost a tough game. Fergie was upset. I've never seen Fergie upset in my life. And if Fergie's upset, a lot of people are going to be upset around him, because that's how much we think of him, So,
yeah, absolutely.
It was just one of those things that happened, and it's not really a big deal. I mean, if they won the division, no one would be talking about it. Even to this day,
yeah.
What game with Don Young? What did Ron say? I don't remember reading that. No one cared. But now because the Mets went past them,
they went
if
to
it
that
happened
game
against any other team, but the Mets don't want to be talking about it. It's just one of those things, and that's part of what makes our game great. It's like Fred Merkle drops a fly ball in the 1916 World Series or whatever. I think it was Fred Merkle, whatever. And that's in his obituary 60 years later. It's just the nature of the game and how the passion involved with the game and the fans.
Right. And, the thing is, DeRocher never played him after that game. That was it. Young was done. It was, so it was like, and Billy said, man, the kid could run down a ball, man. He goes, he could run down a ball in center. But after that, I think it was more the kid just emotionally. Again, the endurance of a full season and the height of that pennant chasing season, that's got to be tough pressure on someone who's never been there. And that's the part I'm talking about as a general manager. I'm like, wow. It's not that the kid can chase down a ball. It's like, God, you got nothing but these great guys out there. Can't you go get someone else to fill in just to keep that pace? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the entire National League infield was Chicago Cubs in the All-Star game.
Yeah.
And had Billy Williams and right. So you got the whole infield,
Billy left,
Cubs, and the right fielders in the Hall of Fame. I mean, come on.
Yeah, left field. That Hickman was in right.
Left field. Billy was left field.
Yeah.
And Jim Hickman was a good player, a solid player. So
sure was. Yeah, sure.
But
was,
again, he ran a long way and almost made a really good play. And he, But hey, like I said, your dad. Part of the reason I loved your dad is he was a human being and he had passion and he loved the Cubs and he loved the game. And he's just going to say some things that maybe 10 minutes later he'll come back, but he always apologizes.
That's so true, man. Yeah. He did, man. If he, I remember as a kid, if there was a tough game, man, we were like, oh God, can someone take us home? Because when they won, it's like, oh, that's great.
With your dad.
It's just, but that's just how he was, man. It was great. I mean, when he was and most time he was feeling good. You know, it's like he loved the game. He loved everything about that life.
The biggest sorrow I have is that he didn't have a chance to walk up on that stage in Cooperstown and thank everybody. That's my biggest sadness in my professional career, because I would have given my left arm to be there and see him cry his eyes out on the stage in Cooperstown, because I know he would have.
Yeah, man. Yeah, no doubt, man. And he also, I think if he just had a chance, you know, him and Ernie never played in a playoff game, you know, and not to do that is, and, you know, because they didn't even have a wild card. I mean, they didn't even have division split until '69 anyway, right? It was just you win a National League,
that's right.
You know. But yeah, that was tough not to. And you know, and I talked to Billy about you know, 2016. He's like, you know, when they won, he said he just thought about Ernie and my dad, you know, and celebrated for them. Yeah.
The one thing, I watched that parade, and Anthony Rizzo's was my favorite Cub at that time. And he got up at that parade, and he wore a Cub jersey, and no other player did this, but he got up there and he pinched the shirt and he held it up on his shoulder and said, "Hey, I'm wearing this shirt for every guy in the last 130 years that's worn this jersey that could never be where I'm standing right now." I almost cried. I mean, think of all the players that wore that uniform and never got a chance to hoist that trophy, you know? It's just unbelievable. It really is.
Yeah, that was something. And even going back, there was something, just seeing everyone wearing, you know, 14, 10, and 26, and, you know, yeah.
Yes,
beautiful.
Absolutely.
Beautiful. Yeah. Ed, well, thanks so much for being my crackerjack call, man. It's great talking to you.
Anytime, Jeff. All right,
you know,
man.
and when I get to Arizona, we got to go out and have a beer, okay? And you come out this way.
Absolutely. Want to toast?
Please get in touch with me.
Yeah, toast to your dad. Yeah, I will.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, buddy. Thanks so much, Ed.
All right, Jeff. Anytime. Take care.
I'll talk to you soon. You too, pal. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
That's our show, folks. Special thanks to our cool crackerjacks, Scott Nelson, Jim McCauley, Debbie Foley, Shiri Matarisi, Terry Rankin-Gurovitz, and Terry O'Brien.
This show is made possible by all of them and to you for listening. If you want to support the show and be a cool crackerjack yourself, subscribe on our Patreon page by clicking the link below this episode, or go to our website, www.peanutspopcornandcrackerjacks.com.
You can also subscribe on Apple Podcasts and listen to our exclusive content. Christy and I just recorded a new Clubhouse Tapes episode where we discuss our limited TV series, Blue Collar Famous.
Remember, don't hesitate to write, give us suggestions, tell us how you're liking the show. Email jeff.ppcpodcast@gmail.com.
My closing quote: in playing ball and in life, a person occasionally gets the opportunity to do something great. When that time comes, only two things matter: being prepared to seize the moment and having the courage to take your best swing. Henry Aaron.
Toodaloo.
SantoFilms.com, the place to buy This Old Cub DVDs, posters, and This Old Cub t-shirts. Get yourself one now at SantoFilms.com.